Hey YouTube, back in episode 7H I was having a fairly crappy day while trying to build the alternator stand. Well, after I uploaded that episode, things continued to go south when I noticed several small issues with the stand and one major stuff up. Keen to get the stand finished, I didn't do any test fitting, which led to me putting the diagonal bars in the wrong place. Without moving the whole stand off to one side to clear the isolation rubber studs, I needed to make some minor modifications. Not only would the diagonal bar hit the studs, but I couldn't get full range of movement because the alternator just hits one of the diagonal bars and two of the slide bolts could only be fitted one way. But that's not the worst of it. I completely stuffed up the alternator belt measurement. I measured from the top of the pulley, not where the belt runs. Fortunately, this mistake turned out to be in my favour when I had the new pulley made, as it lined up where it was supposed to. So in preparation of these new modifications, I've removed the existing diagonal bars and cleaned up the areas that have been welded. Since I won't be able to weld while the alternator is in place, I'm carefully marking out some new locations for the diagonal bars. With the diagonal bars removed, I can now place a stand between the engine and the isolation rubber studs, as the bar will no longer hit them. I'll make a final decision tomorrow, but I'm currently thinking that I would either like to move the top bar closest to the engine further away from the end, or put a V in it to allow me to move the stand closer to the engine. This will give me greater clearance between the isolation rubber studs and the stand legs. With some good daylight to take a proper look, I decided rather than try to squeeze the legs further back, I decided to chop them off and re-weld them back on in front of the isolation rubber studs. Figures. The two legs that are a perfect 90 degrees are the ones I had to cut off. Rather than putting some additional patches on what was some already ugly work, I decided to tidy up some of that ugliness by creating a new end bar. This time, instead of trying to weld a separate piece on the end, I made it so I folded over. I don't know how many times today I forgot to put the earth clamp on. This required only minimal cleanup, and this is a much nicer way to do the ends. After chopping off some of the ugliness, here I'm shortening up the stand and making sure the alternator doesn't hit it during full travel. By shortening the top, I inadvertently made it harder to get the top plate in and out. Making no mistakes this time, checking every step several times. Last time I welded the legs on, I was in a big hurry as I was rapidly losing daylight and I was trying to get it done before the light had gone completely. Since I already had everything out, I decided that I would straighten up the two legs that I wasn't happy with. Both of them were 3 degrees off. So while they matched, they still didn't look quite right. This time I took a bit more care and made a couple of spreader bars to hold them apart at the right distance while I welded them. This made a huge difference to the final product. The stand is now at a quality level I can live with. I seriously contemplated making a completely new stand. During my first attempt to build the stand, I was never really what you'd call stoked with the way the alternator tension adjustment worked. While it pulled nicely in the centre as you'd want, it did create space and clearance complications. Unfortunately, under full travel, it left a lot of the bolt thread poking out the other end, which could potentially interfere with the frame during raising and lowering of the deck, and extended the length of the mower slightly. While this new idea is not quite as optimal from a tensioning perspective, it does offer some additional benefits over the first idea. Firstly, it makes fitting the top plate infinitely easier, while making the whole unit more compact. The tensioning mechanism is only used to tighten the belt. The 4 bolts will hold that tension, not the new bracket. Well, it will partially, but not all of the load. Welding these new brackets on was a little tricky, as I had to be careful not to weld the top plate to the stand. but mostly because there isn't a great deal of area of metal to weld, so what little weld I could get on had to be effective. That's it for this episode. In the next video I will build some sides and work out the final mountings. As always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you all in the next one.